we're going to be focusing on some basic print reading and creating a drawing based on that print. And so this is a little bit different because we typically just jump right in and create drawings, but today I wanted to explain the drawing that we're going to be working on just a little bit, along with some of the icons and the dimensions associated with the drawing. So as you can see, we have a drawing in front of us, and this drawing has got three views. The front view is located in the lower left-hand corner. The right side view, which is basically looking at this object from standing over towards the right side, and then the top view, which is looking straight down from the top of the object. These are called the primary views. These primary views are very typical of drawings that you're going to see created. Now, architectural drawings have primary views also. They've got floor plans and elevations. Same concept. The floor plan is looking down from the top. Elevations are looking from each of the sides associated with that floor plan. So they have the same context overall. So whether it's a shape drawing like this or an architectural drawing, they all work similarly in that concept of relationship between the drawing views. So the front view and the right side view, as you can see, if we were to draw lines straight across, the bottom lines up, the top lines up, and then actually all the features line up also. Any horizontal feature lines up. So for example, this surface is represented again here. Now I also need to mention that this drawing has three different line types. It has the solid lines, it has dashed lines, and then it has a dash, short dash, long dash line also. So each of these lines tell a little bit more of the story. The story begins with the solid lines. Now the solid lines are surfaces we can see. So if we had a physical object in front of us, we could physically see that edge of that object. Lines that are dashed are surfaces that we know that are there but can't see looking at it in that direction. So for example, we have a dashed line here, but then on the top we've got a circle. So that circle is telling us that there's some circular shaped object, or in this case a hole, and you can see that the dashed lines indicate that that hole goes all the way through the part. That same hole is also related here in the right side view, where we have dashed lines to indicate where that hole is located. So the relationship between all the views, and by the way, the top view to right side view actually has a relationship also, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see that there's a relationship between the specific lines and the three views. So the dashed lines are objects that we don't know, or we can't see in the direction that we're looking, but we know that are there. So what's this line here in between the two dashed lines? Well, this is called a center line. It's a long dash, short dash, long dash orientation, and it's very consistent between all the views, and that indicates that that is the center of an object. So if it's a center, then more than likely it's circular in nature. Now sometimes they'll use center lines to show the distance equal between one half of one object and the other half of the same object. So sometimes it locates the very center of the object also. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a hole. It could be any feature that could have the center line associated with it. But it does indicate the center of a feature or the object itself. So we talked about that there's some relationship between the top and the right side view. Well, let's see here. We're going to go ahead and draw a line here. And if we draw the line straight out from this top view, and we're going to do our best job here to try to keep the line straight, and we draw a vertical line from this edge here, and we connect the two intersection points, we get what is known as a 45-degree angle. So that 45-degree angle has that really cool property that if we then take the line and project it straight across. Oh boy, that was a big loopy-doo. And bring this one. It's hard to do it with a mouse and keep the mouse moving at a straight. There we go. And we bring it straight down because that 45-degree angle changes direction. We get the relationship between the top and the right side view. But that 45-degree angle is a directional change. So you can see that even though all these objects have a relationship to each other. So this cutout here has a hidden line in the front view, is shown as two solid lines for the top edges in the top view, and in the right side view we can clearly see the shape. That's kind of cool. Now let's talk about dimensions. Now you'll notice that this object has dimensions placed on all three views, which is important because if we didn't have dimensions on all three views, why would we have a view? There has to be that relationship and that information transfer between all the views. So if you're going to add that third view or you're going to add that fourth view, make sure that there's dimensions associated with it or there's a specific reason why you're adding that view. So first we're going to talk about these overall dimensions. So you can see that the overall dimensions are the farthest away from the part. So the biggest dimensions are farther away, the shorter dimensions are closer to the part. You'll also notice that the objects always dimension solid lines. So there's no dimensions to the dashed lines. Now there are dimensions to the center locations. So that's kind of interesting also, because not only do we have to tell the person that's drawing, but also the person that's making this part, what the size of the object is, and in that case it's a diameter. That's that little circle slash. So that's a, let me go ahead and do that again. That's a, so why are we not getting, all right. So we get a circle with a slash through it. That circle with a slash through it is a diameter symbol. And so that diameter symbol says that the diameter, which is the overall distance from one side to the other, is a 1/2 inch. It also has position information. So that position information is also as important as the size. So every feature has to have a size and position. And so the slot also has a size, so it's a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch on each side, and a position a 1/2 inch down in that location. So that's important too. So each feature has to have a size and position. So that is really important when you create the dimensions, but also when you're reading dimensions, you can see that some are dedicated to the location, some are dedicated to the physical object size itself. We're going to go ahead and create this drawing in AutoCAD, and we're going to replicate this 3-view layout along with hidden lines and the center line positions. So we're going to get that set up, and we'll get started here in just a second with the AutoCAD drawing. Okay, we started at AutoCAD, and I've highlighted a few things on my screen here that we want to make sure that we always focus on. What I did here is I attached a image file of the drawing itself so you can see what object that we're creating and what the dimensions are. But I also made a list of the 4 setup items that we need to go through and set up our drawings. And this gives us 4 steps to success as we begin each drawing. Now you can set these up and save it, and then open up the drawing at a later time, and that way they're already preset. There's a lot of things you can do to help speed up your process, but these 4 steps need to be accomplished to ensure that you get started off correctly in AutoCAD's drawing environment. The other thing is that a lot of times you freeze up and you don't remember exactly what step do you need to do to get started. Well, these 4 steps get you started to the point that you're then ready to draw, and that's the goal here. So the first step is units, and we need to identify the units of measurement that we're working in. And so there is 2 different areas of units. You've got the dimensions and then you've got the drawing. So we're focusing on the drawing units, and that's actually under the letter A up at the very top of the screen. And the drawing units are found under drawing utilities. And so there's different setup items associated with this, and being able to recover drawings and check and compare drawings against each other. But the idea is that we can control our drawing units with this particular command. And so our drawing units, if you take a look at our drawing that we're creating, has got decimal units. So it's basically inch numbers. If it was metric, we wouldn't have the decimal places typically. So it's a decimal value, and our precision happens to be 2 decimal places on all of our drawing environments. So we'll set the length precision to 2 decimal places. And that's one of the nice things, is that we have different types of units to choose from. If you're going to draw an architectural drawing, you start with architecture and then set up the different units associated with that. In our case, the decimal units and 2 decimal places work really well. We don't have really any angles other than 90-degree angles, so we're not going to work with decimal degrees or other options associated with this. Some of the older drawings that you may encounter from the 1970s or 60s may have degrees, minutes, and seconds on them. And then gradient and radians are more trigonometric. But then if you're into architecture and civil engineering, you're going to be working with surveyor's units at some point in time. So that is another option, and those are bearings. So it's like north 20 degrees, 30 minutes, 20 seconds east. And so that becomes a bearing. So when you're laying out a survey or a land plot, you have the correct directions associated with it. But in our case, decimal degrees will work just fine. Clockwise and counterclockwise. In mathematics, 0, 90, 180, 270, okay, typically is worked in a counterclockwise fashion. So 0, 90, 180, 270 is in a counterclockwise direction. So we keep that as the standard. Some maps are created in a clockwise fashion. So the 0, 90, 180, 270 is in a clockwise direction. So just be aware that the ability to change that is there. Insertion scale, what that means is that if we bring a drawing into another drawing, what the scaling factor happens to be. Lighting, we're not going to worry about our lighting at all. And there is the ability to change the direction of where the 0 happens to be. And our default is the mathematics basis, so we don't have to change our direction. If you're going to do a map, you'd want to change the direction to north as 0. So that way you have that control. So units are now set. Our second step is object snap and polar tracking, and those happen to be in the same location. Down on the bottom of the screen, we've got a series of buttons. These buttons allow us to turn features on and off. In this case, polar tracking is a button and object snap is a button also. And so they also correspond to function keys on your keyboard. Okay, so object snap is F3, polar tracking is F10. We can turn them on and off through either the function keys on the keyboard or the settings here. Now, instead of just left mouse clicking, and that if you left mouse click, you'll turn it on and off. If you right mouse click, it'll bring up a series of options. And in this case, we can use one of the presets, or we can choose the track settings, which is what I'm going to select with the left mouse click, is the track settings. So under polar tracking, and I know that we're doing number 3 instead of number 2, but it happened to be in the right spot. But we can do this in either order. The polar tracking We're going to have it turned on. And what this does is that it gives us locked in increment angles. So every 15 degrees will lock in at that 15 degree setting. So it'll be 0, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, and 90. So we'll lock into each one of those increment angles as we draw. And you'll see that here in just a second. The object snap tracking is orthogonally, which means horizontal and vertical, and so that helps. And our angle measurement is absolute. Now what that means is that all of our angles are going to be based on that 0 location. If it's relative to the last segment, and you're going to actually have some drawings where the dimensions are based on relative to last segment dimensioning, and so you'll need to switch this polar tracking setting to last segment so you can get the proper angle position. A good one on this is civil engineering drawings. You have the bearings, but yet you can have internal angles which also indicate relative to last segment. So you're drawing from one line to the next line and the angle between those two, instead of working from the 0 location. So we can set this up, and we're going to go ahead and set this to every 10 degrees just so we can see how that works. And then the object snap setting will also be accessible here as part of these tabs. And there's a series of different options here, and object snap is one that we're going to set up. And then there's other ones here on the list which we're not going to get to today, but how we can selection cycle, meaning select objects and deselect objects, and dynamic input, and how objects are going to be provided information as we draw. So there's different settings that you can do here in this location. On our object snaps, we want to make sure that we have the endpoint, the midpoint, the center, the intersection, the extension, and perpendicular set up. Now those particular settings are the ones that are the most commonly used. Now you might be thinking, if I have the center, why don't I turn on tangent? Because the center of a circle and tangents use the same locations. And so we'll show you how to use the tangent as a pop-up later as we go forward. Geometric centers, another option. Nodes are points, quadrants are 0, 90, 180, 270. Those are quadrant locations. Insertion is when you bring objects in from another drawing. Nearest is not accurate, so we don't utilize nearest very often. Apparent intersection is somewhere in space 2 lines will meet, and that'll become the apparent intersection. And then of course parallel is another feature that we can set up to make sure that our entities are parallel to each other. But the endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, extension, and perpendicular are the ones that are most commonly used in your drawing environment, and we'll choose OK. So let me show you what you've just set up. When we choose the line command, and I just left mouse click on the line, we select the starting point. We can lock in at 0, and you can see that the dynamic information is telling me a distance and an angle. But then I can also then move it up, and it'll lock in at 10 degrees. If you remember, we set the polar tracking to 10 degrees. So every 10 degrees it locks into an angle for us, and we can then control the distance. So we'll show you how to draw accurately in just a second, but I wanted to show you how that 10 degree setting works with that. Now, if we had 2 lines, we can see that we can pick endpoints, that's the square, midpoints are triangles, endpoints are there, but then we can also project, and this is that orthographic projection, so we can find positional locations, and then we can also do perpendicular. So there's the perpendicular setting. So again, the object snap helps us to locate positions within the drawing environment. Okay. The last object setup is called layers. Now layers help us organize our drawing, and that's what layers are about, is drawing organization. So we're going to pick layers and our layer properties that pop up here, and we can select over here on the left hand side and grab this dialog box and move it around. If we stick it too close to the top, it'll dock it at the top, or on the side it'll just go ahead and dock it in place, but we can always grab the top area where it says layer properties, just left mouse click and hold, and you can drag it out. Now I suggest that we create a couple of layers at a minimum, and to create new layers we use the sunshine. New layer. And so we always like to type in names, and for mechanical shapes or just shapes I always do object, hidden, center, and dimension. So those would be the standard ones that we typically would use. So notice that they're names of the line types that we're working with. In architecture we would do it based on walls, doors, windows. So it'd be based on objects you're creating. So you'll adjust the layers based on the type of drawing that you're creating. In this case, we have some settings that we can work with, and the object layer has a color option that we can change. You know that it's turned on, that it's not frozen. And now we'll explain what freeze does here. This freeze and lock are pretty much the same concept. And then color, we'll go ahead and pick the color box. So instead of white, we're going to go ahead and pick we'll pick kind of an orangey color here. And so we can pick any color that we would like. Okay. Now the line weight is how thick the line will print out. And so object lines should be some of the thickest lines that we work with. And if you notice, didn't we set this up as decimal inches? So our line weights are showing up in millimeters. But why is that? Well, if you've got a mechanical pencil handy, if you take a look at the mechanical pencil, on the side of the mechanical pencil it has a number. And a lot of times it'll be like 0.5 millimeters or 0.7 millimeters. And it's the diameter of the lead for that pencil. And that's exactly what this setting is. This basically sets the diameter of the lead, or the thickness of the line, based on the same type of settings that you would have with a mechanical pencil. So setting it up as a 0.5 is perfect. And so it'll be a slightly darker, thicker line if we go to print this and set that up that way. Now when we have different line types like hidden lines and center lines, we have to choose the line type also. But they're not automatic. So we have to load the line types each time that we want to utilize them. Unless of course we save it after we've done all this. So right now there's only one line type available, and that's continuous. Okay. So now we've got to load, and in this case we're going to load hidden lines, and we'll load center lines at the same time. But when we go to hidden, there's three of them: hidden, hidden 2, and x2. Well, x2 is 2x the size, so the dashes are twice the size. Hidden 0.5 is half the size, and then we've got hidden. Well, we've got the ability to control the size of all the dashes. Now, since this is a small drawing, the drawing is only a couple of inches in size. Okay, it's not that big. We're going to go ahead and choose hidden 2 for small drawings. If you go over about 9 or 10 inches, then you want to use hidden, and if you go beyond like 12 or 14 or 15 inches, you want to use the 2x. But if it's bigger than what you think that looks good on the 2x, then you're going to have to go back to the original, and there's a setting called line type scale that we can work with. But here we're going to do hidden 2. And we'll choose OK. And so we've now loaded a line type. Let's go ahead and load the center line type also, and that also has a center 2. And so we'll load both of them at the same time, which is kind of neat that we can just load them both. But under the hidden line, we need to pick the hidden 2 to load it to the layer. So the first one, we have to load it into the system. The second one, we're selecting it to apply it to the layer. And now we can do the same thing with the center. Since we had loaded center 2 into the system already, we can just select it and that will work well. Now colors, again, your choice. I always choose the color green for center lines, and then hidden lines could be a bluish color or purpley bluish color, but again, it's your choice. Okay. Now your companies may have a specific setting for colors and line type settings. Now here's the leap of faith. There's no OK button, there's no save button. Once you're done, you got to hit the letter or the little X to close this window, and it's saved. And we can prove that because once we close it, if we use the drop down here under layer, we can see the colors and the names of the layers that we've set up. So we're going to go ahead and draw the first shape, which is the front view in our drawing. And so we'll get this started and we'll wrap up the video here shortly, just so you can see how to create the drawings. So we start the object layer, we'll choose the line, and again we just want to pick a specific location. Doesn't matter where you pick to start, and we left mouse click and anchor it, and now we've got to draw a line. Well, that line has to be 2 inches long for the bottom of that front view, so we point in the direction that we need to go, which is at 0, type in 2 and hit the enter key. That's a 2-inch line. Now we need to go up, straight up, a 1/2 inch, which is 0.5. So we type that in, and you can see that it's on the bottom of the screen where it types in. It's not in the middle of the screen. So you're not seeing the value in the middle of the screen. What you're seeing is the value where the crosshairs is located. Okay, now we have to do a little bit of mathematics, because now we went 2 inches and we have to subtract a 1/2 inch, so now we got to come back 1.5 inches the other direction, so 1.5, and then straight up, again having to do the mathematics here. It's 1.25 minus a 1/2. Wow, that's going to be 3/4 of an inch, and then a 1/2 inch straight across. And the best part is that if you zoom up on this, it makes it easier to see. Now sure, I lost my screen on the side, but it makes it easier. Now what I did here is I just picked the end point, because the starting and the ending point are the exact same location. Then I right mouse click and choose enter. And that created the first shape. The second shape is up above, and again that's a 1-inch thickness by 2 inches long. So we'll start the line. And here's a little tip. If I come to this top corner and just highlight, don't left mouse click, just highlight. Okay, if I just highlight, no left mouse clicking, no picking, I just move my crosshair on there, notice how I can get this green dashed line, and then it lines up with that edge. So I can just highlight it, bring it up, and then type 2 inches. Come up 1 inch, come back 2 inches, and come down. And then right mouse click and choose enter. Now here's the other cool thing, is that we can project the information that since we are perfectly lined up, I can choose the line command, highlight this top edge, bring it straight up with that green dash line again, and then as soon as I make that connection, that intersection point between the dashed line and my top view, I can left mouse click and draw the line straight up, and it'll be perpendicular and we'll be all set. How cool is that? So we can use it to project. And the same thing can be done for the right side view. So I can pick the bottom or highlight the bottom, bring it straight across. Again, highlighting does not left mouse click. We just highlight, find a spot we like, left mouse click to start. We can highlight, bring it across to get the height. Interesting, we don't even have to type. Now we know that it's 1 inch in depth because we just drew the same top view. We can highlight the bottom corner, bring it across, line it up so it's perfectly perpendicular, and we're right mouse click and choose enter. And lastly, I'm going to go back up and choose the line command, highlight the edge, bring it straight across, and bring this straight across. Now, we have a cutout here in the middle that we need to work on. And it's a 1/4 inch, okay? And so I wanted to show you how to do this. And we're actually going to draw over the other line. So we're going to point straight across 0.25. And the distance down is a 1/2 inch. By the way, if I press and hold my wheel, you notice that I can just kind of shift and move the image. So we're going to come down a 1/2 inch. We went over 0.25, bring it straight down 0.5. Bring it over 0.5, bring it up 0.5, and we can bring the line and finish the line over to the corner, and we can hit enter. Now we've got 2 lines on top of each other here, but in the center I've got to erase that. So if I pick this line in the center and hit the delete button, it will get rid of that. And if you completed all the different segments, it should have replaced that line. If it didn't, you can go ahead and just add that segment in that might be missing. But that's basically how you create the lines. Now the same thing for the hidden lines. Sometimes we have to project over for hidden lines. So we just drew object lines. If we want to draw hidden lines, we choose the layer from the drop down to hidden. And again, I'm going to project this over. So we're going to take this, project it over, left mouse click, bring it across, left mouse click. And we have a hidden line. And I can project up and over for that. And we have a circle here. Now, we can do one of 2 things. We can use the center lines and just kind of draw a couple of lines over, because this object happens to be, 0.5 and 0.75 over to get to the center. So I need to locate that. And so sometimes, let me choose the Home tab again, what we'll do is we'll draw construction lines, knowing that we're going to delete them. So we're going to pick the line, we come up 0.5, and then we come over 0.75. And so that's where the circle is, and we know that the diameter of the circle is 0.5. So we choose their circle, center, and it's not center radius, it's center diameter. So I hit the down arrow below that to get the center diameter. And we actually need to go back to the object layer, but I'm going to purposely draw it on the wrong layer to show you how to fix this. And so 0.5. And we drew it on the wrong layer. That should have been solid. So now we have to pick the object, choose the drop down layer, and then pick the layer, and then hit the escape key to get out of the blue dots. So let me do that again. Let me undo. Pick the object with a left mouse click, choose the correct layer that I need to put it on, and then hit the escape key to get rid of the blue dots. Now, you'll notice that I can pick that short line segment and delete it. But the horizontal line segment, I'm going to actually extend further because that needs to be the center line. Well, why is that important? Because that center line turns into a hidden line, so I choose the hidden layer, choose the line command, and the intersection of that circle and that center line becomes where the hidden lines are placed. And again, You can highlight, bring it straight down. Where that intersection point is, left mouse click, bring it straight down, left mouse click, and then hit enter. That's pretty much it on creating it. We'll get to dimensioning at a future drawing environment, but this is how you can create center lines, hidden lines, and basic object lines. All based on a drawing that we walked ourselves through. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.